All right, we've got Thursday, March 12th, with continuing coverage of the war in the Middle East. Now, let me just check. Looks like the mic is good. I'm going to lower it a little bit. I'm going to leave it there, see how that goes. We've got some headlines. Crank is in the chat on the main broadcast at news.tangle.com. He's asking about the cyber attack. So we can get into that. We'll get into that first. And in fact, if you look at the headlines right below me, the very first headline is Iran begins cyber attacks. So let's start with that. Let's see. I'll leave the map up for a second. All right. Am I blocking ads? I guess we're going to unblock ads. Okay, here it is. Iran-linked hackers claim responsibility for attack on U.S. medical device maker Stryker. Now, I was watching coverage of the Middle East war when this happened, and the claim of responsibility happened either immediately after the attack or before the symptoms of the attack were even noticed, I think. Let's get into the story here. Stryker experiences global network disruption, no ransomware detected. The Iran-linked group Handala claims responsibility for the attack, says it's a retaliation for the strike on the Midab school. I imagine that's the school where over 100 children were killed. So Stryker, it says here on this Reuters report, is a company based in the state of Michigan with 56,000 employees. It's a major corporation, operates in 61 countries, and they said on social media posts that the logo of the Iran-linked hacking group appeared on the company's login pages. Let me keep going here. I may know more about this than is said in this article at the time it was published. It's just saying everyone's worried. It's going to happen more. I told you so. I saw this coming. That's not very helpful. So I believe that this company, Stryker, in fact, let me dig into this a little bit more. Let me try to find another one. CNN, let's see what they say. Stryker makes a range of hospital equipment from defibrillators to ambulance cots. The company's computers in Ireland were hit. Stryker says it serves more than 150 million patients through its healthcare equipment and services. Now, I believe that they make devices, and the result of this hack were that some or most of those devices were bricked. They were wiped. They were rendered inoperable. Now, I don't know why the Iran hacking group selected Stryker, a healthcare company, as what appears to be the first target in this war. It could have been opportunistic. They may know a lot about a lot of companies' IT infrastructure, and this one just matched up with the modality of their attack. It could be as simple as that. We've got a quote here from the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services Systems. And they told hospitals on Wednesday that it had received multiple reports that Stryker's LifeNet electrocardiogram transmission system was non-functional in most parts of the state. Until the transmission capability has been restored, ambulance drivers basically should initiate radio consultation with the receiving hospital. So I don't know how serious that was. It sounds serious when something called LifeNet is non-functional, but if you can work around it by making a phone call, then it could be worse. So the question is, why was this company selected? Did they have a vulnerability that the hacking group targeted? And if so, what other companies share that same type of vulnerability? All right, it's an escalation. It's an escalation. Now let me go back to the map. In fact, I'm going to see if I can pull up Intel cams. Let's see if this works. All right, so we have something to look at while I start things off here. Let me find the next item. So it is 4:42 in Israel right now, 4:42 in the afternoon, 16:42. And there we've got cameras of southern Lebanon where we learned last night, East Coast time, that a very heavy night of attacks conducted by Israel on Beirut and Lebanon took place. We even have video. Maybe we'll find that video as we get into headlines on X. Then we've got the to the right, top right, we've got northern Israel, which is probably looking toward the border of Lebanon. And probably the most you'd see there are interceptors going up. May not be too easy to see until the sun goes down. Middle row, we've got South Israel, Haifa, and Haifa. Again, poor cameras. We've known that for the last 3 broadcasts. This is what we have access to. And shout out to Intel Cams for providing even these. On the bottom row, we've got Tel Aviv, Central Israel, which could also be Tel Aviv, and another North Israel. Look at the sun on that North Israel on the bottom right. Is that the sunset? We are standing by. We have access to red alerts and yellow alerts as they come up in Israel. If that happens, we should hear it. In fact, it just did right now. Just did right now. There you go. Hostile aircraft intrusion on the confrontation line at Shomer and Zarit. That is right on the border of Israel and Lebanon. It's right on the border. You can see that black line. So it sounds generally a hostile aircraft intrusion is a drone that's coming in. I'll leave that there. Oh, Aerosol says Steve Lookner's looking amazing. Well, he's my live stream hero, as you know. And I'm sure he's not streaming right now. He was streaming yesterday evening, and he tends to go late into the night. So I'm happy to provide some coverage when he's not around. I've got a long way to go before I'm as good as my live stream hero, though. Let's see, do we get some new hostile aircraft intrusion alerts? I want to see that the audio on those alerts is getting picked up. I don't know that it is. Anyway, I'll keep an eye on that. I'll keep an eye on the hostile aircraft intrusion and the missile alerts that happen in Israel. They've got a good system for detection. Very good. Let me go over. Let me go off the cameras for a second and just go through some bullet points that happened overnight. This is from Zero Hedge. The article headline is "New Ayatollah's First Message: Hormuz Strait stays closed. More fronts could open." So there was some question yesterday about whether the new Ayatollah, who was announced Sunday night or Monday, there was some question about whether he was even alive. I mean, Israel already said he won't be for long. And those are heavy words. They're heavy words because when Israel says that, you can expect that it's going to come true. But in any case, the Ayatollah Mojtaba, who is the new Ayatollah of Iran, did make his first public message. And he said the closure of the Strait of Hormuz should be continued as a tool to pressure the enemy. He's right. It is pressuring the enemy. And I don't want to jump ahead by commentating yet, so let me just keep going. The Ayatollah vows to keep attacking U.S. bases in the region. In fact, he doesn't say in the region, but I'm assuming in the region. I'm sure he'd love to attack beyond the region, and they do have some capability to attempt that. And he signals new fronts could open soon. The cyber attack is a new front. That front could be expanded. I wouldn't want to try to predict what else he could mean by that. And then here comes President Trump, who simultaneously, at nearly the same time as the Ayatollah made his announcement, President Trump said the U.S. is stopping Iran from having nuclear weapons and destroying the Middle East and the world. And then if we skip to the bottom of these bullet points, his takeaway quote is, "We won." Trump says we won. Now he did say that. I saw the clip. I saw the full quote. That is slightly taken out of context, but he did say the two words "we" and "won." Okay. Next bullet: shipping turmoil escalates as multiple vessels, at least six, were struck overnight. We can try to find out. I have seen some video footage of those. I have seen some information on those. We'll probably run across that when we go through a live feed. I'd like to know what the country of ownership is on those vessels. We've seen a map. In fact, I can bring one up. There are that is a map of the Strait of Hormuz. And you can see that at the pinch point of the strait, the closest point between Qasab and Bandar Abbas doesn't have any ships visible. Now, I think that, so every ship that goes, every cargo ship, every large ship above a certain size has an identification transponder on it. And that's where this information comes from. And I believe that ships are attempting to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, and when they do, they're disabling their transponder. We've seen ships approaching the strait on both sides, nothing in the middle, and then ships appearing going the opposite direction on the other sides. So there have been ships attempting to make the passage. Let me check this. Okay, Aerosol is in the chat at news.tango.com. He's saying, check these and add if interested. Flight radar 24. Yeah, we've got that. We've got that right here. Timed out. There is flight radar 24, ready to go. And yeah, as Aerosol says in the chat, there is no traffic over the countries of Syria, Israel, Jordan, Iraq, Kuwait, and Iran, and Yemen, and Oman, basically Oman as well. And I think the same thing applies as with the marine traffic. We do know that obviously military aircraft are operating in all those countries I just mentioned, and they have their transponders turned off, except when they are on approach and ascending from takeoff and landing. And those takeoffs and landings have been happening in Israel. All right, so we've got Flight Radar 24, we've got Marine, and we've got alerts in Israel on that lower panel. Let's see. Yeah, Aerosol says check out marine traffic. That's what we're looking at right now. Strait of Hormuz. Now, I don't know. Is this going to be something different than what I've got? Let me try. This is what Aerosol sent us. That didn't copy very well. Hold on, guys. Oh, this is video. Let's see. Flight Radar 24 footage shows air traffic diverting to avoid. Yeah, we can see that on the current map. We can see that here. They're avoiding. So I'll just leave it like that. Let's see. Aerosol is also in the chat saying, he says, well, Moj Taba said you can pass and have your carriers escort them. They're basically flexing on us right now because they won't escort the ships and risk their personnel. All leaders involved are really in a pickle, Aerosol says. Yeah, there has been confusion, not comforting confusion, of course, where the insurers say you're not insured, then Lloyd's of London says you are insured, then Trump says we'll insure everybody, then the strait is open, the strait is closed. We'll provide Navy escorts. We can't provide Navy escorts, right? There's not clarity on what the situation is. And as I said, that we do have video footage that proclaims to be strikes on cargo ships in the Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz. All right, Brent crude oil prices tops 100. It did barely and briefly. In fact, let me take a look. Where are we at the moment here? We got CNBC stock market down. Dow Jones down 1.2%, S&P 500 same, NASDAQ down more. Russell 2000 down even more. Yeah, so it was brief and it was barely. So the general oil price is 95, which is up about $5 from where we opened on Monday morning. We opened at $90 on Monday morning. And not long after open on Monday morning, we went up around 105. Now, in the pre-market on Sunday night, before the Monday open, it went up as high as 114. So I think that the only thing that is moderating that price are words, just words. You do have Brent slightly over 100, up 9% today. Okay. Now let's just check. Gold has been going down. So gold goes down as the dollar goes up. In fact, gold would go down as any fiat currency goes up, but the impact of the dollar is just oversized. Aerosol, I'll get to your comment in a second here. I just want to finish up on CNBC. We've got currency exchanges again across the board. It's the dollar showing strength. I know that that's hard to tell because you've got some red, some green, but you'll notice that all the red blocks here, the euro, the British pound, and the Australian dollar, they are all denominated in dollars, whereas the green ones, Japanese yen and Canadian dollar, are denominated in Japanese yen and Canadian dollar. So it's a not a great job of presenting this, but what these all say is the dollar is gaining strength. So the euro exchange is 115. That was as recently as 2 weeks ago. I'd say that was 118, maybe 119. And I know that because I make payroll in euro every 2 weeks. And then Bitcoin is down similar to the equity indexes, down 1.6%. I don't think that the other cryptos tell much of a story in relationship to this crisis or the cost of energy. Maybe not even fiat. All right. So that's where we're at. Let me go back to let me check in and see what Aerosol is talking about. Trump says we need to win this quick with low losses, also secure oil and strengthen the dollar. So Aerosol says that's coming from Trump. And then what we got coming from Iran is they need their next leader to survive long enough to select the next leader, which could have a very high cadence. I think we all agree on that. That could happen weekly. And then Israel needs to win this quick with low losses, also security and resources land. I don't know. I don't know if Trump wants to strengthen the dollar. Does he? He gets upset when other countries artificially weaken their currency. That's one of the drivers of how he assigns tariffs. I don't know. I don't know what Trump wants could change day to day. At least what Trump says he wants. It's tough to infer that. It's not super consistent. Iran, I think Iran wants to inflict enough pain in response to in response to the U.S. and Israel. It wants to inflict enough pain that the other countries that it inflict pains on push pressure on the U.S. and Israel. And I think they're doing a good job of that. I think they're doing a good job of that. Israel, they need to, I don't know what they define as a win. I think that as long as they feel under threat, which I would consider to be a permanent state for them, there's no win in their minds. As soon as they win, I think the clock for them just resets and pressure builds until this happens again. Let's see. Aerosol is saying gold and silver going down because oil is going up. So he's saying that that there is elasticity in the commodity market between gold and between metal and oil. Could be. Aerosol says it's just temporary, but Germany and EU countries are activating their reserves now, which are not much. This whole shebang could really, really crush the brittle socioeconomic structure of the West right now. BRICS could profit. U.S. can either keep petrodollar hegemony or move on, but have to leave behind the old system. Yeah, I agree with that. The word is brittle. That is the word, brittle. The vast majority of the global economy operates on a knife's edge. What did we just see in northern Israel? What did we just see? How can I go back a little bit? I don't know if that's going to be enough. I'm looking at the top right, northern Israel. I don't know if I saw a pigeon or an explosion. I saw a pigeon. There's one of these cams in Israel. It looks like it's mounted on the front porch of a house, and all day long, rock pigeons are going in and out of the eaves on the house. So aerosol. I agree with your assessment there. Brittle socioeconomic structure of the West. Yeah. So he's saying the BRICS could profit from this. I'd say they already are. So the BRICS are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And Brazil is an oil producer. Russia is an oil producer. And neither one of them are blocked by the Persian Gulf entirely. And we were hearing yesterday that Trump is at least talking about removing oil sanctions from Russia, probably not as a favor to Russia, but as an attempt to increase supply of oil to make up for the 20 million barrels a day that are not getting out of the Strait of Hormuz. All right, so that is Aerosol chiming in. We appreciate that. Everyone loves that. So back to Brent crude oil topping 100. The article goes on to say it's the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. That is the IEA saying that. This is the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Next bullet, we've got Energy Secretary Chris Wright, who I think he is having a tough week when it comes to announcing stuff. He says the U.S. Navy is not yet ready to escort tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as military assets remain focused on degrading Iran's offensive capabilities. I don't know why the Energy Secretary is the one announcing the status of the United States Navy. Maybe somebody is trying to do him a solid, because I think that the Energy Secretary Chris Wright is the one who said on Monday, maybe Tuesday, that everything's cool, that the U.S. Navy is escorting. And then the Pentagon came out and said, no, we're not. And he deleted his tweet. Oh, I appreciate you, Aerosol. I appreciate you. And I'm not good at it yet. I'm not good at gathering up the information, especially on X, where a lot of the really good real-time stuff is happening. You'll see when I start going through it that I do need to find a better way to get visibility of things. Of course, I've mentioned on every stream so far that I've done that the reason that I'm doing this, and we're broadcasting on YouTube at the moment, and eventually we'll start broadcasting on Twitch and X. The reason is that these types of broadcasts are capable of drawing in a large audience. And we know that as a result of Steve Lookner, who he referenced. He's getting 1.5 million views a day on these streams. So the intention is that we go on the other platforms, try to build up an audience, and then let those audience people, the audience members, know about Tangle. That's what we're doing. Hostile aircraft intrusion on the confrontation line. Those sounds just don't come in. They're kind of a feeble apologetic alert sound, so it's not that important. Okay, next bullet point: Dubai suffers significant drone attacks. Now, a lot of what we're seeing on these bullet points, we will see some video evidence of once we make our way over to X. So hang around for that. It's it's been surprising for me as I've been watching this that in most cases the words used to describe actions in this war don't do justice to what the video footage shows. So there was headlines yesterday that a cargo ship off the coast of Iraq in the northern Persian Gulf was struck, and there was a fire on board. Now, you don't know if that's a campfire or a fire the size of a house. You see the video of that, there's hardly any ship. It's mostly fire. It's just fire with a little bit of ship. Same thing, Dubai, which is the bullet we just read there, significant drone attacks. Hard to visualize what that means. And Dubai seems to be downplaying the significance of these attacks. So there was a report yesterday, a high-rise luxury apartment in Dubai was hit with a drone. And Dubai didn't waste time to come out and say, no injuries, no significant damage, moving on. You see the video footage of that strike? I'm surprised the building is still standing. And we'll probably see it. It's hard to match up the visuals with the words, is my point. Next bullet, northern Israel is hammered by Hezbollah, the largest wave of missiles since the war began. I question the word missiles here. I don't think that people use the term missile and rocket accurately. And in my mind, the difference between the two is a missile is guided and has a higher potential of size and impact, and a rocket is not guided and smaller. And I don't know how many, quote, missiles Hezbollah has. We know that they have a lot of rockets. IC3 is in the chat. Hi, IC3. Let's go. IDF says it struck key Iranian nuclear development site. Now, I don't know if what they're referencing. Now, they say they struck, okay? I saw video footage of what claimed to be, or what is supposed to be, a Moab bomb that was dropped in Iran. That is the largest bomb in human history that is not nuclear. And that's the kind of thing you'd use on a nuclear development site, especially if it's underground. It's one of the types of things that you may. I don't know how much capability the IDF has to strike underground bunkers. The U.S. leads the world in that. U.S. intelligence assesses that the Iranian regime remains intact. And not only that, we've seen reports today that the U.S. intelligence community, anonymously, is saying that they don't know that the conditions exist at the moment for regime change in Iran. Then we've got the port operations in Oman. Let me pull up a map here, because I do want to talk about the map a little bit. So you've got Oman kind of on the toe of the boot, right there, of, what is that, the Arabian Peninsula? Is that what we're going to call that? So that is Oman, and Oman says that their port operations are halted. And then Trump says, we won. Okay, now here's what I was thinking. This is why I want to look at the map. 20% of the world's oil supply is taken offline by one country who has a coastline that makes it easy for them to shut off transit. And I do think it's easy for them to shut off transit. They don't have to have an air force to do it. They don't have to have rockets or missiles to do it. They have surface drones on boats, unmanned drones with explosives, which I believe is what they used in the northern Persian Gulf yesterday to hit up to 7 ships. They have that, and they've already begun mining the Strait of Hormuz. And I don't mean drilling. I mean putting explosives. They're explosives that are tethered to the seafloor, and they are slightly below the surface where you can't necessarily see them. And if a ship hits one of those things, the bomb goes off. And either they claimed or intelligence agencies announced that mining operation had begun. And I don't know how many mines they've laid. I've heard estimates that they have between 2,000 and 4,000 mines in inventory. And I also saw a headline that said that only about a dozen or so mines have been placed. But who knows, right? And if you don't know, then you have to do all the work to analyze and clear the entire area. You can't just let ships go through when you hope that you got all the mines. And a retired U.S. admiral said that clearing that area, of totally clearing it of mines, assuming no new mines are placed while that's happening, will take a month or more. So as soon as you see a headline that mines have been placed in the Strait of Hormuz, you've got a 30-day lag at a minimum before that passageway can be opened up safely once again. Now you compare that to the amount of reserves of oil that exist, and you have a problem. You have a problem. That they don't match up. The reserves don't carry you far enough for 30 days from now of no passage through the Strait of Hormuz. So that's an issue. Now, what I was thinking about this morning, we've seen headlines that so far, the first, I believe the first 10 or 11 days of this military operation has cost the United States more than $10 billion. So let's just assume a daily burn rate of $1 billion to do this. What would it cost to run an oil pipeline from the Gulf countries to a safer port? That was a question I asked myself. And looking at the map, starting from Iran at kind of the 1, 2, 3 o'clock on the clock, that's not an option, obviously. Iraq is not really an option, because if the pipeline goes through Iraq, the only place it can really end up is Turkey. From a stable, safe landing point for further transit, you get it to Turkey, you can make it to the Mediterranean. But that is rough, mountainous country, okay? Syria, I would say, is not an option. Lebanon is not an option. I don't know that Israel is an option. I don't know that Egypt is an option. Yemen is not an option. Oman is probably also not an option. Oman they are being attacked. They're being victims of attack by Iran, which makes you think that they could be an option. But you'd have to get closer to Yemen. Yemen's a problem. And Saudi Arabia and Oman are not the best of friends. So you've got to get oil from the UAE, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq. You've got to get it west or southwest, like with a pipeline or rail. I don't know. I don't know why that hasn't been considered in the last 30 years. The money's there. As I said, the U.S. is spending $1 billion a day, and this isn't even the United States' problem. I don't believe that the United States gets a critical amount of oil from the Persian Gulf. So this to me And to the extent that the United States is a customer of that oil to any degree, why is the customer solving the problem for the supplier? It should be the oil producing countries that are incentivized to make the investment to bypass the Strait of Hormuz and bypass the instability that exists within the entire Gulf region. That is my thought on that. Now, I imagine this would have to be the most hardened oil pipeline in the history of the world. Maybe large sections of it underground, fortified. But again, it seems to be there should be budget for that, since the oil producing countries are not selling the oil that they produce. And they don't have much else going on in general, like economically. So each one of those countries has made an attempt to transition away from the wealth they have in oil to technology, other industry, and tourism. But the tourism part is taking a pretty big hit right now. Dubai is emptying out, for if what we hear is correct. We got some more hostile aircraft intrusions on the confrontation line. All right, so I'll just keep that map there. I've got a tweet from Egypt, it looks, provided by Aerosol in the chat. Let me see what that is. I'm going to put that in a separate tab. I think that one of the things that Aerosol has exposed, which is very valuable, is that copy and paste from the chat on Tangled needs to be improved. Yeah, that's just going to be tough. Let me click it. That worked. All right, here's what is provided to us by Aerosol in the chat at news.tangle.com. From Current Report, the account on X, Current Report, breaking news. Israeli media reports Egypt is quietly increasing its military buildup in Sinai and is transforming the demilitarized buffer zone into a major military stronghold. Yeah, as I said, when trying to find escape routes for oil from the Persian Gulf, Egypt is a tough one. And Egypt controls the Suez Canal. Egypt and Israel don't have the greatest relationship. I wonder why Egypt would be quietly increasing its military buildup in Sinai, which borders Israel. Transforming the DMZ buffer zone into a major military stronghold. Let me look for something else on that. Like that. The Times of Israel. Sinai is being rearmed and the West is asleep. I wouldn't say that this is the best source. I mean, Israel would know as fast and as well as any other government about military buildups right next door. They would know that. They're flying drones everywhere. They got satellites. They got it all. They could also over dramatize and exaggerate to justify something. So it says in this article, for 40 years, the Sinai Peninsula was not demilitarized out of goodwill. It was stripped of heavy forces because history proved that when massed armies sit across from each other in the Middle East, war is not a question of if, but when. Well, war in the Middle East is always a question of if, not when. No, it's when, not if. When, not if. Regardless of standing militaries, massed armies, borders, all that stuff. It's just volatile. It always has been. My entire lifetime. Sinai was engineered as a shock absorber, a geographic firewall designed to eliminate surprise, temptation, and miscalculation. However, that firewall is thinning. Over the past several years, Egypt has expanded military infrastructure in Sinai well beyond what counterinsurgency operations require. Extended runways, fortified bases, expanded logistics hubs, persistent armor presence. All right, so let me see here. Let me go back to this, which frees me up. Are Egypt and Iran allies? Gemini says Egypt and Iran are not traditional military or political allies, but they are currently moving towards a significant diplomatic reconciliation in 2026, upgrading ties at the ambassadorial level after 45 years of severed or frozen relations. This is as of early 2026. So they're claiming diplomatic breakthroughs. However, it says Egypt is a major U.S. ally and has peace treaties with Israel, while Iran is a key antagonist of both. I just don't see how Iran is a key antagonist of the U.S. I just don't see I don't see this as being primarily the United States problem any more than is primarily the problem of the EU or South America or China. A problem in the Gulf should be a problem for the Gulf. Says recent rapprochement driven by the Gaza conflict and a desire to manage regional stability. Egypt and Iran have held multiple high-level meetings, more than 15, to de-escalate tensions and boost coordination. So it summarizes by saying more than allies, they're more like pragmatic partners in regional crisis management. Thank you, Aerosol, for showing us that. Let me ride that wave of momentum over to X. And let's see what's going on here. Let me give you guys something better to look at while I scroll this. That is live shots of Lebanon and Israel provided by Intel cams. All right, look at this. I'm gonna play that again. So let me pause this. So this is coming in from Clash Report. I cannot vouch for them. Tankertrackers.com, slightly more credible. But in any case, this is video claiming to be the moment that the U.S.-linked oil tanker Safisi Vishnu was hit in the northern Persian Gulf after allegedly ignoring warnings from Iran's Navy. Now I see that the audio is turned off, so you can't hear them saying Allah Akbar. That's what they're saying. All right, let's play it one more time. Now we got audio fixed. Okay, as I said, that in text was represented as a fire on board the ship. That ship's headed to the bottom. One person was killed. And Tanker Trackers is supposing that this video was filmed by the very same people who launched the attack, which would make it seem as if they launched a sea drone laden with explosives at that ship, and they're pretty close to the ship. It looks further away on video, but if you've used an iPhone camera or something, things are closer than they appear. Here's Aerosol in the chat. He's really carrying the load in the chat today. He's doing a great job in the chat. The Israelis seem to take over the former German motto. Now, I should point out that Aerosol is German, is broadcasting and commenting from Germany as we speak. That Israeli seems to take over the former German motto, many enemies, much honor. Israeli basically has nothing but enemies in their mind. Nothing but enemies. I think that I don't think that they even, behind closed doors, I don't think that they would trust what their friends say. Now, they've based on their history, they've got reason for that, but many enemies, much honor. Aerosol says, the funny thing is nobody even really cares about this at all, apart from the oil prices. If this keeps going for a few more weeks, we can expect worldwide price spikes on nearly everything because it's all connected and fuel is the fuel for production. Aerosol is stocking up on groceries right now, and here's his quote, people don't know what's coming. Yeah. You have to, if you want to connect the dots, you've got the IEA saying that this is the biggest supply side disruption in the history of the oil markets, all time. And that means that it should be very easy for oil to exceed its previous all-time high in 2008 of $140 per barrel. Not only because it's the largest supply-side shock in history, but because all the inflation that's happened since 2008 makes 140 not 140. So oil at 200, oil at 300, you start, and we've covered this in the previous streams, as the higher the price goes, the more demand destruction starts to influence and resist the price going higher. So you eventually end up with the global economy operating at the bare minimum of oil consumption because it's just 4 times more expensive than it was the month before. That is not sustainable. At least the world that we know, the economy that we live in, looks a lot different as oil goes to all-time highs. And oil should be at all-time highs right now. It should be right now. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. Iran says it will stay closed. It'll take at least a month. If everything cleared up right now, it would take at least a month to resume passageway. We know that. We believe that. And there's infrastructure that's been destroyed in the the oil producing region. It's infrastructure. And anytime you have open war and then you have a ceasefire or an agreement, the risk of resuming war is high, very high. I, I don't even know why this war started in the first place. Why now? I don't know. Here's a animation that shows ships moving towards and away from the Strait of Hormuz, but not actually passing through, which is, that's the transponder. Now, I have seen clips like this where a ship will approach a line, turn around, and go back the other way. I don't know what would cause that. I don't know why they would approach the line in the first place. Mic on? Yeah. So HFI research is saying the Strait of Hormuz in the last 24 hours, too many games being played with AIS. AIS is the transponding system. But they say one thing is for certain, it is not back to normal. Here is Patrick Bet David, who also lives here in Miami. He says Israel is screwed if Trump walks away from Iran war. He says if Trump walks out of this and says, we did our part, we're squared away, our country's screwed, Israel. Trump's a data guy. He's looking at the markets. He's looking at the upcoming elections. It's a fair point. It's worth considering. I don't know why Israel is as important a partner, as a big of a recipient of American generosity as they are. I do not know why. I don't know why. I was looking this morning about that because every dollar that the United States spends on anything is borrowed, primarily borrowed. The U.S. government is a massive deficit spender. So the U.S. doesn't have the money to do any of this. They can fabricate the money. They can generate the illusion of wealth to spend money, but it's only debt. And so why would a country so deep in debt, who only operates through debt, why would they give financial assistance, material assistance to Israel? Israel also has debt, but it's nowhere near as much. Not in obviously in dollar terms, and not even in percentage terms to GDP. So my thoughts always tend toward isolationism. My problems are my problems, your problems are your problems. And there has to be a real good reason for either one of us to spend our treasure and blood solving the other person's problems. Sinfully Cerebral is in the chat and says, hey, can you tell me what the X account is so I can go follow? Whose X account? Sinfully Cerebral? Tangled News is at live Tangled News on X, I believe. We haven't posted anything, but we will start streaming. Maybe we'll start streaming that next week. Things have been going pretty well streaming at the same time on Tangled and YouTube. That's been going pretty well. So we can probably add in X now. Wall Street Journal says President Trump is signaling that he wants to wind down the war against Iran, but stopping the fight carries big risk even if Iran lets him. Yeah. I have no reason to believe that if the U.S. stops, Iran stops at the same time. I mean, Iran operates and has operated for the recent years as more guerrilla warfare. They're funding rogue elements in Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, at a minimum, who do a lot of the dirty work. And that was going on before the major strikes from Israel and the U.S. starting in the last what was it, last September that the first strikes happened? Yeah, okay, simply we'll follow you back so your news so our news feed's not so bland anymore. Very good. Very good, Lee. Glad to see you. Here's Rick Sanchez. I do not know Rick Sanchez. That's not getting picked up. The audio is not getting picked up. Iran said not a single liter of oil will reach the U.S., Israel, or their allies. Prepare for $200 a barrel. 200 a barrel could be on the low side. Oil is up between 50 and 60% in the last 2 weeks. 200 is well within reach. And he's talking about, I mentioned this earlier, he's talking about the problematic timeline between clearing maritime mines in the Strait of Hormuz and the reserves of oil that Saudi has. They do not match up. And he says the math says brace for a devastating global oil crisis. Aristole's in the chat. He's bracing for a devastating global oil crisis. That's a video claiming to show the unmanned underwater drones that Iran manufactures. Says that they can remain underwater for 24 hours. They're quiet. They're hard to detect. So yeah, the Strait of Hormuz is going to be too dangerous to pass through as long as Iran exists and decides that it should be too dangerous to pass through. It's just too asymmetric to stop Iran from putting any risk at all in the Strait of Hormuz. Even if only one ship a month is hit, it still has a big impact. Johanna says, am I suffering from a cold? No, I'm probably suffering from talking more than I normally do. And I'm throwing water at the problem, Shohana. Believe me, I'm throwing water at it. Here's Mohammed El Arian, well respected. I've listened to Mohammed for years. He was I think at some point he was the CEO of PIMCO, which is a massive bond dealer, financial bonds in Orange County, California, Newport Beach. And so when he speaks, I listen. He could have been a good candidate for Secretary of Treasury. He could have been a good candidate for Chairman of the Fed. He's got those credentials. He says overnight developments have shaken the market's baseline assumption of a swift conclusion to the war and an imminent reopening of the strait, casting a large shadow over the global economic outlook. And he agrees with Aerosol, which is no surprise at all. Some of the financial spillovers are magnifying pre-existing fragilities and starting to trigger flight to cash, particularly among investors caught in crowded trades. So we've got the headline on the top of this live stream, economic stress compounding, oil, private credit, AI layoffs. All three of those things are converging at the same time, which is two more than you need to have a recession. Any one of those three could catalyst a recession. You've got multiple. Oh, sinfully cerebral, is that true? Is it because I'm using one earbud? Let's see what happens when I do this. Oh, really? IC3. Really? IC3 says if you only have one earbud in, it's a husky, sexy voice. I'm serving a global audience here, IC3. Now, does that sound any different? Because it's harder for me. It's weird. It's not as good for me. Does that sound any better? Do I still have a cold, Shohana? Sinfully Cerebral says, should we be pulling our money out of the bank and throwing it in our walls and mattresses? I don't know. The private credit is the only one of those threes that would make that a possible suggestion. And the private credit, even though it's a big number, it's $1.5 trillion, and it's defaulting. It's starting. It's at about a 7% default rate right now, which is a problem. Most of that money, most of the borrowers of that private credit are software companies and tech companies, probably mid to small size. So there could be a run on the private credit funds. In fact, it's more of there is a run, not there could be. People want to pull their money out of those private credit funds. Two big ones have prevented investors from pulling their money out. It's called gating. So they've gated redemptions. And others are probably going to have to do the same thing within 24 hours, I would guess. Yeah, Shohana, I don't have an ooh la la sound effect. In fact, I don't have any sound effects, not for news coverage. Not for news coverage. But if I did, I'd give you one right now. Aerosol says putting money into anything other than paper is a smart financial decision. Agreed. Agreed. I mean, you need enough paper to get through the upcoming couple of months, because you never know what price you can sell the stuff besides paper for at any given time. But yeah, you don't want to have a big chunk of your wealth in paper. Shohana is catching up on all the news thanks to the live stream at news.tangle.com while spending time on their prayer mat. 30 more minutes to go. And within 30 minutes, they'll be totally caught up on the global news. Sinfully Cerebral says there is more news to talk about than just the hostile aircraft intrusion that just popped up in Israel. There is a flooding issue at Danny's house. That is true. I've seen videos. It's bad, real bad. And now Aristole's talking about the huge manipulations for COMEX over the last couple months, which is, I suppose he's talking about silver and gold, paper trading, metal. And he despises paper derivative trading. Yeah, that paper derivatives are a vector of potential fraud. As are it's like the potential is there, similar to naked shorts in equities. It allows you to sell things that you don't own or that may not even exist. Let's see here. I'm going to throw the cams back up while I scroll through some of the slop on X. So you probably saw the news yesterday that the IEA announced that they were going to be releasing something between 300 million and 400 million barrels of oil from strategic petroleum reserves. And I wasn't really well informed on what the IEA is and who it represents. I believe that 150 million barrels of oil have been pledged to be released from the United States Strategic Petroleum Reserve by President Trump. However, so that would the U.S. consumes, I believe, about 10 million barrels a day. No, is that right? However the math works out, I think that what this represents, 300 to 400 million barrels, it represents about 30 to 40 days worth of consumption. The issue is the flow rate. It's going to take 30 days to put that much oil into the market. It's not a one-time dump. So I don't expect any meaningful impact from those SPR oil reserve releases, not in terms of price and not in terms of duration. I think there could be short-term relief. I don't think that the relief will amount to much, and I don't think it'll last for long, which is why I was saying the first 2 or 3 streams, do not do it. Don't release oil from the reserves. If you want oil prices to go down, stop dropping bombs where they make it. Let's take a look at this. We got 4 graphs there. This is from Robin Brooks, who is a fellow at the Brookings Institute. So there's some credibility there. The Strait of Hormuz remains essentially closed to ship traffic because of Iran's attack. Every Iranian attack is a negotiation. Iran knows it has leverage and is trying to end this war on favorable terms. Only way out is for the U.S. to make concessions. That may be the very first time I've seen a Western commentator of some prominence saying Iran has leverage. Aerosol, of course I can. Aerosol wants to see oil prices. And Brent in particular, 101. It hasn't changed. It's maybe changed 50 cents since we started streaming. 101, up 10% on the day. There's Romexa. Welcome, Romexa. So this graph shows 4 different measurements falling off a cliff to essentially 0. Weekly ship traffic, weekly oil tanker traffic, weekly bulk carrier ship traffic, and weekly dry cargo passenger ship traffic, all through the Strait of Hormuz. What Robin Brooks is showing us is that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Here's here's a post. I won't show it. I will. As you guys know, I'm trying to find my feet on how to source news and what to show and what to just say. This is one where I'm just going to say. Bravos Research, financial research firm, says a $2 trillion financial market is suddenly showing signs of stress. I had put it at 1.5 trillion. They're saying 2 trillion. The largest private credit firms are now down by more than 30%. What happens next is going to catch a lot of investors off guard. That's all they say. Here, Aerosol, I'm going to do this. There you go. Are you trading the oil market right now, Aerosol? Is that what's going on? Here's a post from Jim Cramer, who is probably more famous than he is well regarded. I guess that's how I'll say it. He is one of the main anchors on CNBC Financial News. He has a large audience. He has something of a track record in finance. He ran a hedge fund. He launched a company called The Street and took it public. And he says, if the infrastructure is not taken out and the money is not taken away, why should Iran come to the peace tables? They are taunting us with $200 oil. They do not have the cards. Our military must be unleashed. Time to do what we did to Hanoi to get them to the table. Okay, Jim. I don't know what he thinks is going to happen if our military is, quote, unleashed. What does that mean? We're spending $1 billion a day. Time to do what we did to Hanoi to get them to the table. I don't know why he's referencing Vietnam. That's not a high point in U.S. military operations. Here's a quote from Bloomberg from Jeff Curry from Carlisle. The quote is, there is no policy response that can stop the price of oil going up. No policy response. He's talking about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And he's right. He's right. I've been saying it all week. Now I expect we've seen some footage so far. Maybe we'll see a little bit more. But I have heard that countries are now arresting citizens who are filming and posting strikes in their country. I've heard that about UAE. I've heard that about Israel. And we know that Israel, so there are very good camera feeds set up in Haifa, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem. Very good. Reuters, AP, AFP, professionals. But they have been instructed by the Israeli government to turn the cameras off as missiles approach. They're not allowed to show the strikes. So we already don't get much footage. The footage we do get is from people on the ground with phones and internet, and we might start seeing less of that too. And I would say that the less video footage that comes out of the region in crisis, the less footage there is, the easier it is to maintain a neutral sentiment back home. Let's see what's going on in the chat. San Felice Cerebral says Baron Trump bought millions in oil stock before all this happened. Aerosol is saying that the way that the price of silver is just going sideways does not look coincidental. The price spike of metals bought by central banks and governments over Q4 2025 and Q1 2026 show that this war is also helping us suppress precious metals because of the dollar decline. About the central banks, I know that central banks have been buying. I do not think that I'm not aware that it's been the United States or Israel that's been doing the buying. I know that China, it's difficult to know what China's doing, but their reported stockpiles seem to keep increasing. I think India was the Central Bank of India was participating in the metals market. And lately, at least this week, the dollar has been strengthening relative to other fiat currencies, not declining. Now, that being said, gold is hanging in there. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at gold and silver. So that chart has not shown any weakness. There's no weakness on that chart, anywhere on that chart. That's gold. Gold is down about 1% today, which is a big move historically for gold. 1% up or down is a lot for gold, but it's not a lot for this year. You can see on the chart there. It started this year at 4,300, just call it, and it's now at 5,000 this year. That's gold. And silver, on this is a 1 year chart. It's not going sideways. Well, you've got lower highs since in this year 2026. You've got lower highs, but you also have some higher lows. So you've got a triangle or a wedge that could be forming there. That big move, this big move right here, on this chart it looks like a blow off top. It took, like, if we here's where we're at now. So we were at the same level in January that we're at now. So from January, within January, that entire move happened in 2 weeks. And we know that the precious metal markets are slower and less volatile. I just mentioned that about the percent moves. So on a slow motion market, that could be what a blow off top looks like. Yeah, sideways, but if it is a wedge or a triangle, then there could be a breakout, and I imagine the breakout would be to the upside. Yeah, Aerosol agrees with me about how wise it is to use the United States military excursions in Vietnam as a benchmark for anything positive. It's not. Shout out Jim Cramer. I'll put it back on oil while I keep scrolling around. Brent. Aerosol's asking for Brent. There is Brent. Brent crude. Now it is below 100. I don't think that there's anything. I don't think that 100 is a psychological level. I don't think that there's anything special about breaking, holding, resisting, supporting at 100. None. All right. Back to the grind of AI slop. Let me check. You know what, guys? Give me 2 minutes. Give me 2 minutes. All right. I'm gonna put the be right back. I will be right back. Just give me 2 minutes, okay? I'll be right back. All right, we're back to husky sexy mode. Single AirPod. I found it, Aerosol. I found it. Okay, I was looking. I was looking to see if I could skip ahead of some of these feeds. Let's take a look at this. I haven't read this, but it's an interesting headline. Russia is meeting with the U.S. team on the energy markets crisis. I'm just going to focus on the bold parts of this article. Moscow is busy on the sidelines making strides to improve bilateral relationships with the United States, while demonstrating how vital Russia is to global energy markets. They discussed restoration of Russian-American relations and the current crisis in global energy markets, according to the top Kremlin's official statement. Yeah, here it is. It says the U.S.-Russia meeting comes on the heels of Washington declaring a temporary ease in targeted energy sanctions that allow India to buy Russian oil currently stranded at sea. The majority of the oil that flows through the Strait of Hormuz goes to Asia. And we do have a good audience on news.tango.com in Asia, and the Philippines in particular. And Water and Fire 08 specifically has been giving us price updates at the pump on the scenes in the Philippines. And it was up 20% overnight on Monday, and it was up more again yesterday. So Asia, the prices in Asia, at least what we know from the Philippines, are spiking. And that is at the consumer level. Ooh, thanks for the tip, Floratus. Thank you, Floratus. Thanks for the 50,000. Wow, we've got this stream has got 1.3 million Milliks so far in tips. I really appreciate that, you guys. That helps out a lot. In no small part, because this broadcast as a business is already in the hole 100 million Milliks. I had to buy, I didn't want to broadcast from G/News, which I do own. I own G/News. But I wanted to broadcast from news.tangled.com. I wanted that to be the URL that I share on YouTube, X, and Twitch. But I didn't own the user at news. I had to buy it from Ericsson. 100 million. 100 million I paid. So I'm in the hole. Thanks for, you guys are helping out. I appreciate it. Sorry for that distraction. Yeah, thanks, Floratus. Iran has laid 12 mines in the Strait of Hormuz. And Russia is offering themselves as a key partner in stabilizing the energy crisis. I mean, at what point does it become obvious to all these countries that are trying to play the ball and cup game with a stable market? At what point does it become obvious that the best way to improve the economy is to stop blowing stuff up? That I'm talking to you, Russia, and I'm talking to you, United States. Felita's here. Felita's in the chat. Hi, Felita. Thanks for tuning in. And by the way, if you haven't already, I've got in the post here on the mainstream at news.tangle.com that you guys are in the chat are watching. I've got the link to the YouTube channel. We're trying to grow the subs on YouTube so that we get in favor of the algorithm on YouTube. We start to get an audience on YouTube of non-tanglers, and then we start to expose those new people to Tangled. That's what's going on. So sub up to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Here's Kirill Dmitriev. Do we know who that is? No. Is it the same Dmitriev that was in these negotiations? Yep. Okay, so Kirill Dmitriev, according to this article, is Putin's directly appointed special envoy who held a meeting with the United States with the head of a working group on economic cooperation between Russia and the United States. Okay, so that is the guy who's representing Russia, and he posted this. What does this picture of the Strait of Hormuz mean for oil markets? He says it is not AI. We already know what it means, Dmitry. We don't need you telling us. Dmitriev says sanctions do not work and are counterproductive. Well, Dmitriev's being sanctioned hard, but not as hard as he was last week. All right, let's go back to that while I peruse more slop. I'm going to reload this page. I'm going to try to take it from the top. Here's Michael Burry. No, it's not the actual Michael Burry, though. Skip that. Here we've got Anas Al-Haji, who works in energy, 200,000 followers on X. Anas Al-Haji says, in case you're wondering why oil prices continue to rise despite the U.S. announcement of a massive SPR oil release, he says, in the SPR literature from more than 30 years ago, experts warned that announcing an SPR release might signal crisis and cause panic. Here we've got Christine Amanpour, a CNN chief international anchor. So Christine Amanpour is a CNN news reporter and says, well, actually, she's quoting Maryam Alemzadeh, who is an expert on the IRGC, that is the Iranian military, who says that, yes, the Iranian military has been weakened, but that's never been the strength of the IRGC. And she's speaking specifically here. She goes on to say, it's not going to be an easy takeover for the protesters. So I think that what she's referring to is the hope that if the U.S. and Israel weaken the Iranian regime, weaken their military, weaken their leadership, that the people who have been protesting the past few months in Iran, and maybe even outside forces like the Kurds, would step up, take to the streets, and take Iran over for themselves as a substitute for the U.S. and Israel putting boots on the ground. I think that is the hope, is a hope of the U.S. and Israel. And so this Maryam Alemzadeh, this who's presented as an expert on the IRGC, says there is no easy path for that to happen. She does say that the majority of the population of Iran would prefer it, which means that the sentiment in Iran on the ground is is opposing to the regime. But she says the weapons are still in the hands of the IRGC, and they don't need advanced equipment to repress a popular uprising. There's some truth to that, I think. U.S. Naval Forces Central Command. That's the real account. This is real. It's not interesting. It may not even be relevant, but this may be twisted into a headline that you see somewhere else, and I'm going to arm you with information to ignore that headline if it pops up somewhere else. The USS Gerald R. Ford, United States aircraft carrier. In fact, I believe the newest one, biggest one, most expensive one, most advanced one, experienced a fire in the laundry spaces. 2 sailors got burned and are stable. So there was a fire in the laundry room on the world's most expensive naval ship. Let's see this. I will switch to this. Let me see who I'm looking at. This is Rick Sanchez again. This is the second time we've referenced Rick Sanchez. Rick Sanchez is the host of Journalistically Speaking, formerly seen on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, Univision, and RT, Russian television. Is that what RT is? Each U.S. Patriot missile costs $4 million, yet they're being fired at Iranian missiles as if money grows on trees. Well, Rick, if you work at the Federal Reserve, money does grow on trees. faster than trees grow, by the way. While those same missiles strike their targets without breaking a sweat. So when did they become so ineffective? The truth is they never really worked. Oh, this is footage. I thought I was going to show you footage from now. This is footage from 1991. We can skip that. The struggle is real, guys. All right, Aerosol's coming in with another link. Let me see what we got here. Yeah, I saw this, Aerosol. Is this real? Is this real? I did see this video. Donald Trump with Jake Paul. That doesn't look real. Now let me see. Yeah, okay. So Trump is wearing a purple tie. That could be real. It could be real. Yesterday, Trump was wearing a purple tie, which the conspiracy theorists were all over yesterday. Here, I'll show you this. There's Trump with a purple tie. The conspiracy is Trump only wears a purple tie right before ... And I don't think it was made clear what the ... was. But there he is. And he did have, so this looks like where he was in Kentucky yesterday. Yeah, I'd say that's real. I know you guys didn't hear the audio, but the audio sounded real. And Jake Paul did say, we love you, Kentucky, which is where Trump was yesterday. Interesting. Aerosol, thank you once again. You just keep feeding us, Aerosol. Carrying the load. Oh, man. Here's a quote for you. There's no image, there's no video. This is a post by Jeffrey Gunlock, who is the Bond King. He doesn't call himself that, but he is the Bond King. He is the top dog in the U.S. Treasury bond market. And he says, quote, "Our fund's performance remains strong," unquote, "but we cannot meet redemption requests." Wow. That's his quote. He's talking about private capital, private credit. We talked about that earlier, that now there's a handful of private credit funds that have either gated redemptions, they're not allowing people to take their money out, or they are going to have to soon. So he is highlighting the fact that these funds that are going through that are saying that everything's fine, but we can't give you your money. Those two things don't work together. Aristotle got another post he wants us to look at. It's bowling. Thanks, Aerosol. It's always the risk you run. I mean, I'm clicking these links off camera, okay? Fair play. Got to do it. But if you want to see somebody hit a 8-10 pickup down at the bowling lanes, Aerosol's got you covered. He says that makes him feel bullish for the United States. Not going to lie. Okay? Fair play. Mario Nafal. I haven't read this yet, but the first part of it makes it seem like I should. Minutes after I write this, reports that Dubai's international airport was hit. Dubai's international airport was hit. Remember, I mentioned at the opening of the stream that Dubai leads the way in the Gulf region for trying to transform their economy from oil-based to tourism and other industries. That is not easy to do when ballistic missiles and drones are striking your international airport. That happened yesterday. Air defenses were activated in Bahrain with reports of their airport being struck. This is already a regional conflict. This is not a global conflict. This is not World War III. And we talked about that with Maya and Danny. They were both in the chat talking about what constitutes a world war. And we were talking about that on Monday. This is not a world war. And I don't see any indication that it's on the path to becoming a world war. I don't see that. Not yet. I don't see any indication of that yet. Okay. And then Mario Nafal says, this is what sleepwalking into World War III looks like, after I just said what I said. We're in the very, very early stages, but the process is in motion. And the longer we wait, the higher the likelihood of a world war. Maybe, okay, the way that I would agree with what he said, if I did agree with it, is not the path to World War III in regards to the Gulf crisis is not military, it's not kinetic, it's not bombs going off. It's the stress that the economic impacts will have on the rest of the world that could drive them to war. In the same way that I thought COVID would, and the same way that I thought Russia and Ukraine would. This goes back to my claim and Aristole's assertion using the word brittle, that the global economy operates on a razor's edge. It does. And it doesn't take much to tip it off of that razor's edge. But what is surprising, to me at least, is how long it can take. How long it can take. We've got a red alert on the confrontation line in Mizgavam, right there on the map below me. And that is not a drone. That is either a rocket or a missile, I believe. Here's Peter Schiff, Uncle Peter, who's coming in with a hot take as he does. A lot of the times he's right. He says, Trump is now taking the position that since the United States is the world's largest oil producer, high oil prices are good for us, Americans. But if that's the case, why did he promise lower oil prices when he ran for office? Why didn't he promise higher prices so the United States oil companies could make more money? That's a hot take by Peter Schiff. Let's see. Let me just look. What else did I have here? We talked about the cyber attacks. We talked about the new Ayatollah's first public statement that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. We talked about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve releasing oil. We talked about Trump saying we won. And we talked about Dubai targeted. So I am clear to keep scrolling through looking for updates. Here's a tweet by Open Source Intelligence. It's one of the OSINT accounts. Let me see. Let me see if I can tell you more about them before I. They've got 1 million followers, monitoring real-time news and open source intelligence. Open source intelligence is very cool. It's very impressive. It's figuring out cabinet level intelligence using publicly available information. That it's I respect what those guys do. Open source intel on X is saying that a mysterious radio station is broadcasting encrypted messages in Persian. Persian is the language of Iran. Madoto TV reported that the station transmits coded Persian messages via shortwave radio, messages that, according to some intelligence reports, may be used to communicate with sources inside Iran. The broadcast reportedly began a few hours after the attacks on Iran started, and the source of the transmission appears to be in Western Europe. During the broadcast, a Persian-speaking voice can be heard saying, "Attention, attention," followed by a sequence of numbers. Former U.S. intelligence officials note that stations like this are sometimes used to relay instructions to field agents, designate meeting points, or issue operational guidelines as a backup comms channel. Reports say that in the following days, the transmissions were temporarily disrupted by beeps and electronic noises, possibly an attempt by the Iranian regime to jam the communication channel. I don't understand what there's now. I'm confused. A radio station is broadcasting encrypted messages in Persia from Western Europe, and Iran is trying to disrupt it. Open source intel, you gave us some juicy morsels of things that I can't make sense of. Aristotle says that I did a disservice by not watching the bowling video to the end because it morphs into Iranian officials as bowling pins, and the bowling ball transforms into an F-35 fighter jet, and then shows bombing footage. He's not even joking. Metal Pack says that was weird. I had the stream from Price on the screen and the chat from MJR's stream. Loaded now, and all is okay. Good to hear. That is Metal Pack transmitting live from Western Europe. Here is a post from Ian Bremmer, political scientist and author, about 1 million followers, including Mohammed El-Arian. Ian Bremmer says, as of today, the United States has no capacity to reopen the Straits of Hormuz or defend tanker traffic. None. If President Trump is correct, and there are no more targets to hit in Iran, I'd say that's a rather serious dilemma. That's a good point. Everything he said is, well, so what he's saying, his claim is based on the assumption that the United States has no capacity to reopen the Straits of Hormuz or to defend tanker traffic. And as of this moment, today, that's true. And he does say as of today. So that's good. Good job by Ian Bremmer. And his point is, how can both things be true? How can President Trump be correct in saying that there are essentially no more military targets to hit in Iran? Quote, we won. But also, the United States Navy cannot reopen the Straits of Hormuz or defend tanker traffic. That is asymmetric warfare. That is the guerrilla warfare that Iran is good at. CENTCOM is confirming that a laundry machine on an aircraft carrier caught fire. Now, here's some footage that I do want to show you. Let me just check the source a little bit. I don't disagree with aerosol. Jim Ferguson, UK, 400,000 followers, including Alex Jones. So take that as you will. Let me just make sure I don't show something old from 1990 or something. Okay, I think that this is current. Here's the post. Breaking news. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. There you go. Jim Ferguson, breaking news. The Houthis strike an oil tanker in the Red Sea. Now, if we look at the map, I'll go back to the post in a second. But the Red Sea is over here. Persian Gulf is over here. So the Red Sea is what connects to the Mediterranean through the Suez Canal. And similar to the Strait of Hormuz, there is a choke point here between Djibouti and Yemen, very narrow point. And Yemen is no friend of Israel, and I would say by proxy, no friend of the United States. Okay? So here we got breaking news from Jim Ferguson saying that now the Houthis have struck an oil tanker in the Red Sea. The oil tanker Chias Lion has been attacked in the Red Sea. The vessel is a crude oil tanker, was reportedly struck by an explosive unmanned boat launched by Iranian-backed Houthi forces, causing damage to the ship. Initial reports indicate the vessel was hit by a surface drone / explosive boat. Damage was reported to the hull. No immediate casualties were confirmed. Here's the video. There is what is alleged to be the Chias Lion oil tanker. That's a big explosion. Look at this again. Look at the stack. We're gonna watch that again. Watch the oil stack on the ship. It's like they throw it into reverse right before impact. You see a big plume of black smoke come out of the stack. So there's no smoke from the stack. There's the smoke right there. So they made an engine room procedure right at the time of the strike. Right there. So now you've got the potential. Oh, I didn't even show it. I didn't show it. Here you go. Sorry about that. Here you go. Watch it again. That is the Chias Lion reportedly in the Red Sea, not the Persian Gulf, not the Strait of Hormuz, the Red Sea, which is on the other side of the Arabian Peninsula. And that report is allegedly, the attack is allegedly from the Houthis operating out of Yemen. And if the audio worked, you'd hear more Allah Akbar. So how much oil passes through the Red Sea? About 5 million barrels a day. So the Strait of Hormuz is 20 barrels a day. Red Sea is 5 million barrels a day. So it would if the Red Sea was shut down, it would make the supply shock 25% worse. That is about 10% of total seaborne traded oil goes to the Red Sea. Let me see. So Arisol's shown us the live UA map. Let me take a look at that. So this website, live UA map, became prominent during the war in Ukraine. Let's try. I'll put this up. Let me put this up on the screen, and then we'll try to decipher it, because it does require some deciphering. Okay. This is from Aerosol in the chat on news.tango.com. Yeah, I guess I wish I didn't do that. Now I'm gonna reload it. Okay, so I'm just gonna mouse over, try to decipher this. I think so. This is interesting. It's aggregating incidents in the region and showing you roughly where they are on the map, and then listing headlines. So this one right here, what happens if I click this? U.S. Central Command, the aircraft carrier Ford experienced a fire in the laundry room. What happens if I click that? That is not a good map. That is Tampa, Florida. Okay. CENTCOM, U.S. Central Command, is in Tampa, Florida, but the USS Gerald Ford is not in Tampa, Florida. We're just finding our feet here on the UA map. We've got video. Let's see what happens if we play a video. Moments of intense airstrikes targeting sites in the city of Avaz in Khuzestan province, southwestern Iran. Southwestern Iran. It's a lot of destruction. That is a lot of destruction. And now how do I get back? Like that. China says we urge all parties to the conflict to cease military operations. I don't think that China. Let me look this up. I'm wondering how much oil is not getting delivered to China. Because, as I said, the majority of the oil from the Persian Gulf goes to Asia. And the Strait of Hormuz is closed. We have had reports this week that Chinese ships have been allowed to pass. And Gemini says, yes, oil is being delivered to China. While Middle Eastern oil is threatened, China has relied on sanctioned oil from Russia, Iran, and Venezuela. Russia was the top supplier in 2025, which accounts for 20% of imports. Despite the conflict, Iran has sent at least 11 million barrels of crude to China since February 28th, when the strikes began, often using shadow tankers that go dark. So I based on this, I don't think that China is suffering at the moment. And on the Monday stream, I think it was Monday. Was it Monday? Sometime this week when we were streaming, I said personally, I don't want to find out how China responds to its oil being cut off. That would be a step closer towards World War III. I don't know how to. I'm just not great at using this UA Live map. Aerosol. There's the new Ayatollah. So it's a good site. I mean, they're doing a good job aggregating news and video. Let me throw the cams back up and go back to the salt mines of X. We have been streaming for 2 hours and 15 minutes with ongoing coverage of the crisis in the Middle East. Now, I don't know if this is the fog of war. I'll throw this up. It's becoming clear that you can't believe what anyone says about anything on either side. The United States said that Iran is placing mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran says we're not placing mines in the Strait of Hormuz. This report, the second bullet point says that Iran is letting some ships cross the strait. We just talked about China being the beneficiary of that. Trump admin set to temporarily suspend the Jones Act shipping rules to lower prices. Let me see what that is. The Jones Act is from 1920, I believe, according to Gemini. And it mandates that all goods transported by water between United States shipping ports be carried on ships that are U.S. built, U.S. owned, at least 75% or more, and U.S. crude, 75% or more. In practice, I don't see that happening. I don't see that is that happening? Like ever? Applies to transportation between U.S. points, including Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and Guam. Could be. Yeah, I don't know how important this is. So it says foreign flagged, foreign built, or foreign owned ships cannot transport cargo between two U.S. points, either directly or through a foreign port. I don't know how important that is. Let's check in on oil. Stock markets are gaining back from some of the earlier losses. Oil's not moving much. It has moved. It's up 7%, but since we've been streaming, it's within $1. Aerosol says China's still getting oil. In fact, it seems that Iran is exporting pretty solid while the whole rest of the world gets attrition-style oil price spikes and attacks. Yeah, I agree with that. China imports roughly twice as much crude oil as the United States. I seem to recall that if the United States wanted, they wouldn't have to import any. I've also heard that the United States is the largest producer of oil, which would back that up. Which again begs the question: why is solving the Middle East a problem for the United States? I don't know. Here is Javier Blas, an energy and commodities columnist at Bloomberg, saying that Saudi Arabia is booking super oil tankers at sky high rates, $450,000 a day to book super oil tankers. And before the war started, that price was $100,000 a day. And it says greater than $450,000 a day. So let's just call it 5x. And they're trying to shift crude exports from the Red Sea into global markets. A massive armada is on its way to load the kingdom's crude from the Red Sea instead of the Strait of Hormuz. And we just saw a report that the Houthis attacked a ship in the Red Sea. Look at this. Is Aerosol running the social media from the White House? Look at this strike. They are using cartoons. This is from the White House. Yeah. Dropping bombs and destabilizing an entire critical region is just like playing a Nintendo Wii. Real fun. That's the White House. I suspect they'll be posting a video of bowling sometime soon. Former CIA analyst Larry Johnson warns this is not under Donald Trump's control anymore. It is outside of his control. I agree. I mostly agree. When you're thinking through Donald Trump's what options he has available to him, it's not the same as previous administrations. He's willing to do different things than prior administrations have done, at least in the open, publicly. So Donald Trump has made his play militarily. He's made his play with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. What else does he have in mind? I don't know. It's always a surprise. Aristole's in the chat at news.tangle.com letting us know that the instabilities in the Middle East correspond to the United States getting out the gold standard and moving from the gold standard to the petrodollar. I'm paraphrasing what he's saying. The petrodollar is the petrodollar was a partnership with Saudi Arabia where the United States would, on some level, guarantee the defense and protection of Saudi Arabia in exchange for Saudi Arabia only selling oil for US dollars and deploying excess US dollars from those sales in US Treasury bonds. That is the petrodollar. And Aerosol is saying that since then, we've seen countless wars in the Middle East. including military interventions to secure oil. So is the Fed gonna print up some more dollarinos, as Aerosol says? I don't think you're wrong, Aerosol. I mean, there's definitely a connection between the two. I don't know how big of a connection there is, because I mean the Middle East has been a problem for a long time, thousands of years. But I mean, to your point, Aerosol, the problems in the Middle East that have existed for a long time become a lot more apparent and a lot more important outside the Middle East since the petrodollar. I think that is fair to say. I got a video here of Iran. We got two guys sitting up on a hill with a couple of acoustic guitars. Sounds like maybe it's outside of a restaurant, a cafe. Okay, that doesn't look real at all. In fact, that's not real. Oh, maybe it is. Yeah, I thought that fire in the background wasn't moving. It is. Says, have you ever seen a nation in the midst of war does not run away but returns home? Have you ever seen a city where under the shadows of bombs, the night lights are still on and life continues to flow through its streets? If you haven't before, you have now. This is Iran. That's interesting. He says, the calm of the people comes from two things: a bitter trust that the attacker will not target unarmed civilians, and surrendering to fate from which they see no escape. I mean, it's one nice thing to be able to trust that your attackers aren't going to attack you. There is that. It's happened. It's happened, but probably not as policy. There are some women outside my broadcast studio here, and they're speaking in loud languages. Loud. But I don't see it being picked up on the mic. I'll show this. I'm not sure exactly what it is yet, but let me read it. OSINT Defender, highly credible account. Another one of the OSINT accounts, open source intelligence. Crazy footage obtained Wednesday from outside Royal Air Force Base Fairford in Gloucestershire, England, showing ground crew members with the U.S. Air Force in full view of the public unloading missile delivery systems from and loading GBU-31 2,000-pound bombs, JDAMs, onto a B-1B Lancer long-range heavy bomber for future strikes. And by future, it means right after lunch. What is the range of a B-1B? I guess it doesn't matter. The range is, they have mid-air refueling. So yeah, they can launch from the UK, strike Iran, and come back to the UK. That does not look like a weapon. Those look like weapons. Those are probably 2,000 pound, the 2,000 pound JDAMs. Here's a quote, apparently from Iran. This is posted by Mario Nafal. Iran says, "If we go down, you're coming with us." Bob McNally on X, who is the president of Rapidian Energy, says if the Strait of Hormuz flows do not resume for a month, that's the worst case disruption duration my colleagues at Rapidian Energy and I modeled last June when we mapped out a US Iran conflict on global oil and natural gas markets. We modeled disruption durations of 7 and 30 days. When we briefed on the deep dive analysis before the conflict, people dismissed the possibility that the world or the US would permit a long-term disruption, expecting no more than a couple days. He says it's the mother of all no bueno. There is Rami Guadera saying good morning at 5:56 p.m. And I suppose that Rami is in the same time zone as Israel, where it is 6 o'clock in the p.m. Now Jim Cramer is doubling down on his America should go Hanoi, and he's saying the Kissinger plan must be in play. So let me look and see what's Jim Cramer. What are you talking about now? The Kissinger plan generally refers to the controversial, often alleged strategies devised by the U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger during the 1970s, primarily involving the Middle East. Key aspects include manipulating the Lebanese civil war to partition the country or relocate Christians to facilitate Palestinian resettlement, and establish a $25 billion energy plan for oil-consuming nations. Evacuating Lebanese Christians to the west, which would allow the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, to settle in Lebanon and alleviate pressure on Israel. Relying on Israeli military strength to force Arab nations into negotiating on U.S. terms. So I guess the point, I guess Jim Cramer is saying segment Lebanon, move the Christians into the west part, move Palestinians to the eastern part, and that's supposed to solve something. That's Jim Cramer. Bye, bye, bye. I'm ignoring rumors. I'm going to take issue with this. Mike Pompeo, former U.S. Secretary of State and director of the CIA. Okay. 11 days into Operation Epic Fury, the Iranian leadership is now so disorganized and under threat that they're sending cardboard cutouts to public events. Not a good sign if you're trying to defeat the two best militaries on earth. Here's where I think that that's a stupid thing to say. I don't think that Iran is trying to defeat or even compete with the two best militaries on earth. Iran is trying to defeat the will of the global economy to suffer. Rami says that he is currently located at GMT plus 1, and Israel is GMT plus 2. And Aerosol says it's 6 p.m. in Central Europe too. We've got news from the ground covering the world at news.tangled.com. Aerosol says Mike Pompeo has to tamper to the neocon voters and the AIPAC evangelists. He's doing a little rah-rah there. I think he's missing the ball altogether. I don't think Iran is trying to defeat the two largest military. It's not the two largest. It's the US plus someone else isn't the two largest. The US is the largest by such a large margin that it doesn't even matter who else they team up with. Paul Rand says he's a senator, U.S. Senator U.S. Senator Rand Paul. Our greatest threat isn't Iran. It's our exploding national debt. We were never in danger of Iranian troops invading the U.S. Yeah, true. The war never should have been started. I don't know if it should have been started. I don't know. I won't pretend to know. I have questions. I don't think that the question, why has it been started, has been answered. But I also know that I don't have access. None of us have access to the same level of intelligence that the United States and Israel have. So I'm withholding judgment on the why. I am pointing out, however, that the why has not been well explained. All right, I'm going to show this. I mentioned the mother of all bombs before. In fact, let me pull, before I show it. I'm going to show you a picture. I just want to show a picture, not a video, just a picture. That is Moab, the mother of all bombs. It's the biggest conventional weapon probably ever. Let's go back for scale. There it is. There's the Moab. It's about as big as an 18-wheel trailer. Okay, so that's the Moab. Here's what I think the Moab looks like when it goes off. Here we are on X, Mario Nafal. An explosion in Iran earlier today, and these are happening daily, multiple times a day. Now, I don't think that the US has a large stockpile of Moabs. Okay, but that impact looks like it's miles away from the camera. Miles away. Look how big. And that's what you would expect a tactical nuclear weapon to look like. And that is well off in the distance. Now, Mario Nafal doesn't say it, but I have seen this clip before today, and I believe that there was some assertion that that strike was a nuclear facility. No, Moab is not. It's not a ballistic missile. It's a free fall. It's a guided free fall munition. It's carried ordnance. Let's see what can carry it. I think that the B-2 stealth bomber maybe can do it. Actually, Gemini says the GBU 43B massive ordnance air blast, the Moab, also referring to the mother of all bombs, is carried and deployed by a specialized U.S. Air Force Special Operations Transport Airport, the C-130. That is a C-130, a Herky bird, but those are not Moab bombs. So yeah, it's flown in by plane, dropped, and guided. I mean, it doesn't have to be guided with too much precision because the blast radius is enormous. Yeah, Aerosol, I'm a few minutes behind on the chat, but Aerosol is saying that the U.S. is the largest military. Israel is good, but only because they get U.S. aid. Pretty much. Yeah, the brute force aspect of Israel is because of U.S. aid. They do have some clever tech, but it's not all brute force. And then Rami Gwadar is saying that Israel is not one of the best militaries. Best police system, though. Great they do have great military intelligence. And of course, they're not one of the best militaries, but they could be the best military in the Middle East. You take the United States out of the Middle East, and Israel is the top dog in the Middle East. And they do have nukes. They don't say they have nukes, but they have nukes. Aristotle answering the big question. Actually, he's not answering it. He's asking it. Aristotle's asking the big question, when will China invade Taiwan? Do they wait further for the conflict to escalate and strike when all hands are bound? And then Rami says China might get a good deal with Taiwan instead of war, as everyone is expecting war. I think what I would consider with that question, when will China invade Taiwan? China is watching the stockpiles of weapons in Western countries get smaller and smaller and smaller. And while I think that the industrial military complex is and has been ramping up production in the last few years because of Ukraine, I don't think that they're doing it at a scale, an open full war, global war, military wartime economy would look like. They're not doing that. So there are limits. There are limits to how fast these stockpiles can be replaced. And you have to assume that they're being spent faster than they can be replaced. And every day that continues is playing to the favor of China vis-a-vis Taiwan. I'm watching a video of the Iron Dome intercepting. I'm sure you guys have all seen that before. I'm just looking to see if this is worth showing you guys. I'll put it up. You're going to see two interceptors from the Iron Dome converge on a single target, which is cool. You can also see how maneuverable it is. These two interceptors are about to take a 180-degree turn. There's two more, and they're going to converge on that ICBM. The Iron Dome is cutting edge on air defense, but part of that is because they're defending a relatively small geography, and they don't have to. It doesn't have to be mobile. And we're also seeing for the first time the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome. I believe the Iron Dome is a catch-all phrase that covers layered air defenses. So low altitude rockets, mid altitude missiles, and ICBMs, which are coming down basically from orbit. And for the first time, we're seeing them deploy their laser system, which is knocking down the low end rockets at low altitude, basically for free. I mean, each shot is basically free. And what do they call that? The Iron Beam. It's called the Iron Beam. Directed energy air defense system developed by Israel. What is that in this on these Intel Cam feed? Southern Lebanon. I assume that's smoke. And look at that. So the top left video, there's a lot of smoke. And then right below that is a camera feed from South Israel, which is looking into southern Lebanon. And you see that same amount of smoke. Oh, actually, South Israel. No, it'd be North Israel. So it'd be the bottom right camera. Hard to say. But I don't think it's fog. I don't think it's rain or fog. Aristotle says all this opens up possibilities for Russia's advance into Ukraine. Europe, which is where Aristotle is, Europe is getting caught up in an energy crisis, which means less spending for arms for Ukraine, and Russia could seize the opportunity. Yeah, that the energy in Europe is kind of a moving target now, right? Because Hungary and Slovakia want to continue to get energy from Russia. Other countries don't want that to continue. Price of oil is going up, which benefits Russia, at least in terms of, even though they're doing shadow market sales to China, India, on a minimum, China and India. So it's all tough to try to make predictions off of. So this just in from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, talking about China. He says, this weekend I will meet again with Vice Premier He Lifeng to continue the U.S.-China trade and economic dialogue in Paris, France. Yeah, one of the things we haven't talked about in regards to spiking oil prices is the impact that that has on fertilizer for agriculture. It's related, deeply related. Rami Gwadar says he wants to invade Europe to get a visa. I don't know how current this is, what I'm about to tell you. The post is 3 hours old. The account is called Limitless. I'm not putting a whole lot of credibility behind this content creator. Nonetheless, he says Iran's foreign minister just confirmed another U.S. strike damaging a desalination plant on Keshem Island, which is an escalation targeting water infrastructure. We focused on that a lot on Monday, targeting water infrastructure and desalination plants. And Iran was responding with reciprocity and targeting desalination plants in other countries in the Gulf, where the vast majority of the drinking water for the population comes from. Says Saudi Arabia gets 70% of its drinking water from desalination plants. The United Arab Emirates gets 90%, and Qatar 100%. Well, now he's saying he's saying I'm wrong, that Iran hasn't hit a Gulf desalination plant yet, and he emphasizes yet. We talked about that on Monday. More about China from Gordon Chang, author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America and the Coming Collapse of China, and China's Going to War. Okay, well, based on those three titles, he's got a little bit of a bias here. He is saying China is retreating or being forced out around the world. Beijing is pulling out of Afghanistan. China's Ministry of State Security has ordered the immediate withdrawal of Chinese teams and interests from the country. And it doesn't say much more than that. What is going on in the chat? Aerosol says, either the U.S. will come to help. Come to help who? Europe? Aerosol? The U.S. will come to help who? Or we, he says we, and he is German, so we stay in tiny NATO, or we join BRICS. And then Rami says, Israel may hit it and blame Iran. USA might do it too. Hit what? I'll show you this. Breaking 911. 1.6 million followers. They claim to be America's #1 alternative news source. Dramatic footage of a UAE, United Arab Emirates helicopter shooting down an Iranian Shahed 136 kamikaze drone near the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. There's the helicopter. There's the Burj Khalifa, tallest building in the world. There's the drone, and it's falling. I think Iran could hit the Burj Khalifa if it wanted to. It would be more symbolic than anything else. I mean, I think that Dubai is already really struggling with this. The expatriates are incentivized to leave. The tourism is incentivized to stop. And I think it would be a fait accompli if the Burj Khalifa goes down. Looking at a post by Jin Woo, IQ. I've never seen somebody put the number of their IQ in their username. But Jin Woo Kim has done just that. He is telling everyone that he has an IQ of 289. And not only that, on his profile, he says, I'm Jin Woo Kim. I have the world's highest IQ. It's 289. And it's scientifically verified. And so listen to what I have to say, I guess. He says America has deployed a weapon that was supposed to stay classified for another decade. The soft kill electronic warfare, a capability most people didn't know existed. They can shut down an entire battlefield without firing a single round. Now, I don't know whether having a high IQ gives you access to information like that. But Jin Woo Kim, IQ 289, would have us believe that very thing. He even posted a video that someone else made. I was talking about building an oil pipeline in the Middle East. Totally uninformed proposition from me. And coincidentally, Javier Blas is saying an oil bypass pipeline buys time but doesn't solve the problem. SPR oil releases buys time but doesn't solve the problem. Only reopening the Strait of Hormuz solves it. But that, I would say that opening and keeping the Strait of Hormuz open is largely out of the control of the U.S. and Israel. He concludes by saying Trump has a few extra days to finish the war before oil forces him to. Finish it how? Finish it how? Yeah, Aristole's in the chat saying, we've talked about this. You've got influencers posting reels on IG talking about how safe it is in Dubai. Now those same people are camped out in the airport trying not to get hit. Well, the airport in Dubai is getting hit. And people in Dubai are getting detained for filming attacks. Yeah, we talked about that too. All right, Rami, thanks for stopping by, and you are welcome for the briefing. Let's see what Aristole's got here from Mario Nafal. When was this? Let me pull this up. We've been talking about Mario Nafal all day. When was this? How do you see when this was? Iran's new supreme leader just spoke, and it's worse than I expected. Key statements. These are all quotes. All U.S. bases should immediately be closed in the region. Those bases will be attacked. We will obtain compensation from the enemy. If they refuse, we will take their assets to the extent we deem appropriate. And if that's not possible, we'll just destroy an equivalent amount of their property. The Strait of Hormuz must remain closed. The two key words there by the Supreme Leader are remain and closed. That means it's been closed and it's going to stay closed. It's closed. Countries in the region must clarify their positions regarding those who have aggressed against Iran. Well, let's see. Let's pull up. Let's go through the countries. I assume he's talking about Kuwait, Saudi, Bahrain, UAE, and Oman. That's my belief. And it is further my belief that, and Iraq, I guess Iraq too. Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, and Oman. I think that Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, and Oman have all been hit by Iran. So the supreme leader of Iran is saying that countries in the region must clarify their positions regarding those who have aggressed against Iran. I think that all of their positions, in part, is that they have been aggressed by Iran. Now, it could be said that the strikes in those countries by Iran have been targeting U.S. military installations. But a luxury high-rise apartment building in Dubai is not a military installation, and is also not the United States. Discussions are ongoing regarding the opening of other fronts in areas where the enemy has little experience and is highly vulnerable. These other new fronts may be activated if the state of war continues and is deemed appropriate. What are those new fronts? Cyber? Economic? What else? Aristole's in the chat saying the CIA had an office in there, apparently. I suppose Aristole's talking about the luxury high-rise apartment in the UAE. Mario Nafal, and this post was brought to us by Aerosol in the chat at news.tangle.com, summarizes by saying, in brief, the new supreme leader of Iran is more hardline than his father, the previous Ayatollah. His demands from the U.S. are extensive. And he is ready, one could say he prefers, a prolonged war. That is the supreme leader of Iran. Brought to you by Nafar, brought to you by Aerosol. We just crossed the 3-hour mark. You know what I forgot to do? I was watching the playback on YouTube of one of our previous streams, and I didn't like the video quality. We are streaming out at about 3 megabits per second, and I was going to try increasing that. And maybe I'll try to remember to do that next time. I want to make sure that the people over on YouTube, in fact, let me We've got at least one person on YouTube. It's better than zero, but not much better. We're going to keep at it. That's the third. Yeah, it's a 3-hour stream. It's a 3-hour stream. But you know what, Aerosol, you've been helping out so much. I mean, it's a couple of old internet buddies just chopping it up with current events. You're there, I'm here. It's no big deal. I am going to go back up to the top, see if I missed anything. Now it must be said. It just must be said that the tools on X, I think, are not as good as the tools on Tangled. I am looking at a curated feed, which is wow. Aerosol put his money where his mouth is. That's a tip of 1 million. 1 million millics just came in from Aerosol. We appreciate each other right now. It's I'm trying to find my way through an algorithmic feed on X. Of course, Tangle doesn't have an algorithm. It's all chronological, and you can filter it the way you need to. The algorithm is in your hands. So I'm looking. I just reloaded this feed, and the first post is from 37 minutes ago. So I want breaking news. Thanks to Aerosol, and of course many others, our broadcast, the main broadcast on news.tangle.com, has earned 2.38 million millics on this one live stream. That is really good. Really good. This is unrelated for the moment. On X, El Gusano del Barrio. I guess I pronounced that in Portuguese, not in Spanish. El Gusano del Barrio. There you go. Night is approaching, and the people of Cuba will very likely enter their 6th consecutive night of protests against the regime. Trump said Cuba's next. Why? I don't know. Now, I did see what I would consider to be an unconfirmed report. I mentioned that I wanted to gloss over gossip and rumors. What I'm about to say was clearly in the camp of gossip and rumor. Doesn't mean it's not true, but somebody said, hey, I know people, and the people I know are saying that units are being mobilized for boots on the ground, a ground invasion in Iran. No other details, not a hugely credible account, and I want to present it as such. Then we've got, the reason I mentioned that, Mossad commentary on X, about 1 million followers. It says, major strike in Iran. The armored core base in Avaz, Iran has been destroyed. This base is where Iran's tanks and armored units are stationed and coordinated in the southwest of the country. It's hard to know where the southwest of the country is based on the shape of Iran, which is this. Here is Iran. It curves. So is the southwest of the country the Strait of Hormuz? It is the south, and it's the most western part of the south. The Post says, if confirmed, it would be a serious blow to Iran's ground forces and military infrastructure. If you were going to send in troops, that is what you would see. Destroying tanks and armored units, possibly near the Strait of Hormuz. Let's see. Aerosol saying, at Price, that is me. I am your host, at Price. What are your thoughts on false flag operations to possibly escalate the situation? Of course, it can only be speculation, but the only one who could really profit off it by dragging others into it and on their side is Iran. I don't think the US wants to escalate it further, so they have the neocon war dogs bark for crowd support, but in reality, they just rather want to keep some distance while slinging rockets. Also, they have to hold Israel back from destroying the oil depots since they want to secure those / make a deal. And he says, and just as I typed this, there's an ongoing shooting in a synagogue in Michigan. Oh, this is probably not the source. This is the New York Times. There's the headline. Police respond to shooting at a Michigan temple. Let me find something that's not blocked. Active shooter in Jewish temple and school in Michigan. I think that there's a big enough Muslim community in Michigan that this could happen very easily without it being a false flag. So I don't know if I know that's probably a coincidence that these things happen at the same time. I just want to put that out there. Police responding to reports of an active shooter at a Jewish synagogue and school in Michigan. A driver crashed into Temple Israel in the Detroit suburb of West Bloomfield. Large police response to the scene. Yeah, the Jewish, so it says the Jewish Federation of Detroit ordered all Jewish organizations in the area to lock down. That is not uncommon. I think that the Jewish organizations in most areas are at elevated levels of security alerts in the United States constantly. They don't mess around. They don't mess around. Okay, let me get back to what Aerosol said. False flag operation to possibly escalate the situation. But I suppose Aerosol is implying that the false flag would be conducted by Iran. I don't know. I don't know. You know, I'm thinking about false flag operations in the past, and I'm asking myself, how much time passed between the event and it either being confirmed or even accused of being a false flag? There's time. There's time. The accusations or evidence of false flag take time to be revealed. And from that standpoint, the impact of the false flag is similar to as if it was not a false flag. So I guess what I'm saying is a false flag operation historically can be effective. Now there was reports. There was headlines yesterday, and it's not as sensational as it's going to sound. But the headlines yesterday was law enforcement organizations in the state of California have been advised that there is a risk that Iran has ambition to launch drone attacks from a ship offshore California and strike California. And the headline was the main purpose of the story. Clicks were a main purpose of the story, because when you read the article, it was hedged in three different ways. It was ambition. It was a possibility. It was a threat that was supposedly revealed prior to the strikes in the Middle East. But as a result of that, the reaction to that was, whether it was true or not, it opens the door for Trump to launch a false flag operation in California. That was the consensus from the Reddit hive mind. Paris, I'm about to show you Moab. The mother of all bombs. There it is. Apparently, in the cargo hold of a specially modified C-130 Hercules, This is from Trump Fact News, and it doesn't really matter who's posting this, because this video that we're about to watch is from the archives. This is probably a test drop. But it says, breaking news, images of the launch and detonation of a Moab. Yeah, it is images of a launch and detonation of a Moab, but I wouldn't go any further than that. Here we go. That's a big bomb. And I believe that is Pensacola, Florida. So now we'll watch that again. Does the size and nature of that detonation match the video that we saw coming out of Iran? And I would say it kind of does. The plume looks of similar size. The explosion that we saw, the footage that we saw in Iran, there was a higher order detonation, but that could have been the result of what it struck. So you don't see a huge flash right there. The flash that we saw coming out of Iran was 10 times that size, but that could be as a result of what it hit. We're going to keep that in mind. That is a Moab. I'm watching a video of supposedly Syria. I'll show it to you. It doesn't mean anything. So this looks like a homemade mortar shell. It looks like a propane tank. And drop it into a rusty old sewage pipe, and then lob it 1,000 yards. Big boom. I don't know what that is. But that when I think of Hezbollah in Lebanon, that's the quality and sophistication that I'm imagining of the weapons they're using. I mentioned on the last stream that it's a little surprising to me that the mainstream media in the United States is reporting on the conflict, but they haven't, as far as I can tell, they haven't been spending the time questioning the conflict. They're reporting on it, and I describe that as possibly a honeymoon phase between the administration and the media. Um, I guess I say that hoping that you could rely on the media to answer questions like why is this happening? But I also suppose that historically, even when it looked like they were trying to answer that question, it wasn't a good answer. So I guess I'm not missing anything. I'm just going to throw this up. This is just some math related to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and the effect that it's going to have. And all week I've been saying don't use it. Do not use the SPR. It's not what it's for. The Kobesi letter is putting math to that and saying releasing oil from the reserves barely offsets the disruption. So the U.S. and its allies just announced that 572 million barrels of crude oil reserves will be released. We know that that's going to take weeks. It's not all at once. It's about 30% of the total reserves held by the U.S. and IEA countries. 20 million barrels of crude flow through the Strait of Hormuz in normal times. That has come to a halt. That has stopped. And so, as we said earlier, the SPR release will cover about 30 days worth of supply that is missing from the Strait of Hormuz. And then they're extrapolating that a little bit here. I'm not sure how accurate this is, but they're saying that this is the 13th day of the war, which means the equivalent of 260 million barrels of Strait of Hormuz supply has been halted. Not sure how accurate that is. I don't know for how long the strait has been shut down. But the bottom line in this opinion piece by the Kobesi letter is that releasing 30% of the reserves covers 16 days worth of supply. And that is part of why I thought it was a bad idea. And they say that's why the price of oil is ignoring the reserve news. I don't know that it's ignoring it, because we don't know what it would be otherwise. That news is baked into this price. So what would this price be were it not for that release and that announcement? I don't know. Probably higher. Yeah, Aerosol and I are I guess the theme of the recent chat here is asymmetric warfare. Which the U.S. is not, I would say the U.S. is not good at. Or it's hard to know if they're good at it because the U.S. is the top dog in symmetric warfare. Not even close. Not even close. In fact, let me pull up. I want to see this military spending by country. Here's Gemini. The U.S. spends over 900 billion annually. I think that's a lowball figure. I think it's higher than that because I don't think that the military spending line item in the U.S. budget. I do not think that includes NSA, CIA, and NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office, which is like the NSA used to be the stealth organization within the defense world in the U.S. But the NRO has always been the stealth line item of budget. It's the space budget is astronomical, and I don't think that that's included, but it does support the United States military. So you've got the U.S. military at about $1 trillion, and then I'm not going to do the math here, but I want to. You can pretty easily see based on China, Russia, Germany, India, Saudi Arabia, that $1 trillion spent by the U.S. is larger than the rest of the world combined. Combined. What in the world? Why is Seattle John now gracing us with his presence in the chat on ongoing news coverage of crisis in the Middle East? I just tagged you yesterday in a comment, Seattle John, and not only that, but our good friend at Sam also tagged you in a comment. And here he is, Seattle John. Can anyone guess where he is from? Aerosol says, again, Aerosol is coming in from Germany. He says it's crazy how we're fourth place on the list, yet our military is hilariously under-equipped. Not only that, he says the military spending is 75% money laundering. I tell you. Yeah, Seattle John's here, for sure. I don't have any sound effects, Seattle John. I can't punch up what's happening or ooh la la. I can't even give you a virtual kiss. Not on these broadcasts. Would that I could, Seattle John. Would that I could. We saw an unconfirmed report about a non-nuclear electromagnetic pulse weapon. It's not what they called it, but they basically said the U.S. has deployed a weapon that they didn't even want to recognize as existing for 10 more years. That was on a very unverified, very non-credible account. But that being said, here's more from Mario Nafal. Let me see if I'm following Mario Nafal, because we've been talking about this guy a lot. Follow. There you go. Okay. 3 million followers on Mario Nafal. So he says, some reports are claiming possible use of a non-nuclear electromagnetic pulse weapon in Iran. These are different to high-altitude nuclear EMPs, which blanket huge areas and called widespread blackouts. They have no big blast or radiation spike. Then there's a video of a big blast and possibly a radiation spike. So that EMP, electromagnetic pulse, that is a side effect of a nuclear weapon. It sends out this electromagnetic pulse. It's not part of the design. It's just a side effect. And it fries, it disables anything with a microchip. So this is now 2 reports of the United States military, quote unquote, turning the lights out. Trump was talking about the use of something similar in Venezuela. He called it the discombobulator. And I think that might have been a sonic weapon, but he did say that they turned out the lights in Venezuela, and I think they did. And I also think he said that they turned out the lights in Iran, and they may have temporarily or locally, but if this is Iran, there's lights on. Oh, you know what? That's my fault. I was saying it was 6 o'clock in Israel at the same time that it was 6 o'clock for Rami Gwadar, at the same time that it was 6 o'clock for Aerosol in Germany. And I keep looking, wow, it's still 6 o'clock in Israel. Amazing. Nope. It's coming up on 11 p.m. And I've been showing you a frozen live stream from Intel Cam for 3 hours and 29 minutes. That's on me. We're still finding our feet here with ongoing coverage of live breaking news. Stream number 3. Doing our best. I have never heard of the U.S. Oil and Gas Association. They say they represent America's oil and gas producers and their workers. They posted on X, crude will inevitably flow. It always does. They are replying to Javier Blas. We got a red alert at the confrontation line. This is live in Shlomi. That is indicating a rocket or missile launch from Lebanon into northern Israel. You can see it on the map there. We're keeping our eye on that. We talked about Trump saying that he was going to suspend the Jones Act, and then we looked up what that meant. It's from the 1920s, and it prohibits non-U.S. manufactured, non-U.S. owned, non-U.S. crewed cargo ships from making port of call between two U.S. ports. That's what the Jones Act is. Rory Johnston, who claims to be an oil market research and founder of CommodityContext.com, says that if the Trump administration is suspending the Jones Act, you better believe that they're pretty darn close to some kind of petroleum export restrictions. Those will make the domestic U.S. pricing environment more tolerable for a few weeks, after which it will make the situation worse. Okay, guys, I'm running into the same headlines over and over. I think we've probably got caught up on Thursday. So I'm gonna cut the transmission and keep my eye on things. And if anything comes up, I'll come back on air. Well, look, here's Seattle John. That's the second reference to Agenda Free TV and my live stream hero, Steve Lookner. Yeah, he's leading the way, isn't he? He's getting 1.5 million views on each one of his videos this week. And Seattle John, since this is the first time I've seen you in the chat on these streams, I'll let you know. I'll let you in on a secret. Here's the secret. The secret is, it's not a well-protected secret. I've said it on every stream multiple times. But the secret is, streams like this are capable of attracting a large audience. I'm broadcasting this on YouTube. I will start broadcasting on X and Twitch as well. And the intention is to pick up a non-Tangled related audience and expose them to Tangled through these streams. That's what's going on. That is why I just spent 3 hours and 34 minutes covering breaking and ongoing news in the Middle East. And it pains me to say it since you just got here, Seattle John, but I've had a number of women poke their heads into this broadcast studio as if something is important that needs my attention. And I've hit a wall on the headlines. So I'm going to wrap this up, monitor the situation, and come back online if needed. All right? Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Aerosol, for really hanging in there and loading up the chat with great stuff to look at and talk about. I really appreciate that. Rami was here. Floratus was here. We had a good stream. And I'm going to pull it and talk to you guys later. Thanks, everybody.